Good morning, MJ. Good morning, everyone out there joining us today.
Hey,
Hello.
good morning. Thank you for the introduction, MJ, and hello to everyone. Hello, Dr. Chris. Well, we get to have a fun call today, a webinar that, we want to make sure that we're not getting political. We're going to state some facts and let people, come to their own conclusions. But we're going to talk about something that can be a little sensitive, and it's going to be about pre-existing conditions. Because we've been hearing a lot in the media, if you're plugged in at all, the fear around these pre-existing conditions. And our former FDA commissioner, Scott Gottlieb, noted that on August 30th, he stated that in the US, there's a high rate of us citizens with pre-existing conditions. And that can lead to a higher rate of COVID-19 complications. So what does this mean? There's so much data out there, and we want to just be able to help kind of clear some of this up. So Dr. Chris, do you have any comments to make about that?
No, just we're going to speak to the overall health of our country and what that means going forward and how we can help ourselves in that big picture.
Right, and so let's look at a chart here. This is incredible. 1 in 2 Americans have a pre-existing condition. And this was in 2008. 2008. Okay, this is 12 years ago. I couldn't even find the data on what was most current. But if we look at, what is a pre-existing condition? It's really where you've been either diagnosed or treated for an illness or an imbalance. So even if you have back pain, that could be considered a pre-existing condition. But if we look at under the age of 18, 5% of the population under the age of 18 has a pre-existing condition. And then you can see as the age group moves up, we move into that 48% are being treated or have been diagnosed with a pre-existing condition. We don't even have the numbers of 65 or older. So we know that what we see by this chart, there's definitely going to be an increase. And the University of North Carolina, they did a study. And this study was pretty recent, and they showed that only 12% of Americans are metabolically healthy. That means 1 in 10 Americans is considered healthy. So we don't tell you this to get you upset or angry or, we're trying to state some facts here so that we can help you understand that you can turn around a pre-existing condition. A pre-existing condition is an imbalance in the body, and there are ways to be able to help reverse some of these pre-existing conditions. And that's what we're going to help share with you today, some of the choices and some of the things that you or your clients can make as far as these choices to reverse these pre-existing conditions. So when we look at, I'm going to just give you a visual here of when we're young. On the left-hand side, you see this building. The building is a great structure, the plumbing, the maintenance, the electrical, everything is working and functioning, needs very, very low maintenance. This is when we're young and we have vitality. And when we move over to the right and you see the building that's more broken down, torn down, this is when we have a pre-existing condition. This is when a major imbalance shows up, or we start to feel some pain, or it's difficult to recover from, some kind of a physical exertion. But this is a great visual for us to all see so that we can look and say, okay, what happens as we age or as we start to experience pre-existing conditions?
Well, I like to say that this accelerated breakdown that's reflected in that building it speaks to a disease model that we have in this country versus a healthcare model, and that's what we're trying to teach and help everyone understand. And also, we have a global pandemic, and we hear about statistics and the different countries all over the world. And when we talk about herd immunity, we're looking at something that requires specific foundation in order to make it work. And the statistics that Dr. Tina shared was that it's the U.S. model versus the European model, which is much different. Europeans have a far different attitude on how they look at their health and well-being. So let's take a look at this slide and kind of get underneath what we mean by a pre-existing condition. And as we've shared many times, the underlying cause of primarily of chronic conditions is stress. And stress causes inflammation. And here are some of the 7 factors of inflammation that we want to talk about. Eating inflammatory foods, that means too many simple carbohydrates and rancid fats in our diets instead of whole foods that are good and filled with good essential fatty acids and good oils. And then you have blood sugar imbalances. And medically, we refer to this as leptin resistance. That's the hormones that facilitate our ability to use the sugars and make energy in our bodies. And this is pretty much starts out with the control of the central nervous system, because stress causes us to go into a fight or flight response. And your brain starts sending signals to the different glands in the body to activate, and specifically the stress gland is the adrenals. And the adrenal glands start to release a whole lot of adrenaline and cortisol. You hear us talk about cortisol all the time, is the stress hormone. So these hormones raise your heartbeat, they send blood rushing to the areas that need it in this emergency times when you're under stress. So the blood goes to your muscles and heart and all the important organs, and away from digestion and healing and repair. So that's a big factor. So when you have chronic stress, you have less of the focus on healing and repairing the body. And also it leads to behaviors such as eating disorders and addictive behaviors. So this is all part of what we're trying to help you understand. Where TeloYouth, we keep impressing on everyone that it's a stress mediator. So if these are all the effects of stress, how important can a stress mediator be? Very, very important, and why we want you to learn about it and how to share it. Another factor that's very common in our culture is leaky gut syndrome. And even before the GI tract starts to break down and leak because of swelling and inflammation, we see a breakdown in the digestive system. So this is where you experience the heartburns and acid reflux and increase in stomach acid. And this affects the way your food moves through your body and impacts elimination, that it can cause diarrhea or constipation. It's no coincidence that there's a $20 million industry of over-the-counter digestive aids and products that are being sold, at our drugstores and health food stores, because we have so much disruption of our GI tract, and this is where the breakdown starts. It's the beginning of that stress cycle we go into. And the next category there, chronic stress. So what does chronic stress mean? That's where, again, we're getting beyond the point of being able to regulate our stress cycles, where we can respond to stress and then bring the body back to balance. But then when it doesn't come back into balance, then we start to experience this accelerated breakdown, and that leads into poor sleep habits. We'll get more into that later, but this is where you break your circadian rhythms, where you don't sleep as well, you don't wake up refreshed, and everything starts changing in your daily routine. A lot of this has to do with environmental stressors, the environmental toxins that we're exposed to. We have a toxic brew in the food and water and the air, and especially now here out west, we're dealing with these fires. It's just a very, very, very stressful time for individuals, and the body is being called upon to help deal with coming back into balance and maintaining some form of health. So you see how we're really pushing the limits on keeping ourselves healthy and sound. And then you have chronic infections. Well, the chronic infections come about because of long-term suppressed immunity. Because when you suppress the immunity, you change the circulation, the blood and the lymphatic doesn't circulate as well to clean out the toxins, and you have the buildup of the toxins in the system. So it's a feeding ground for all these foreign invaders. So the viruses, the bacteria, the fungi just have a feast on our system, and the immune system is suppressed. So therefore, you have much more, more predisposed to colds more often, and flus, and all these other types of infections that we get. So we get them more often, and they last longer. And these are the things that we're trying to help you understand, that when you can mediate stress and build back your immunity, which is the design of the TeloYouth ingredients, which we'll describe later, but it allows you to take back your defense mechanism. Dr. Tina, anything you want to add in there?
Well, every single one of these points that you discussed here in detail is why Americans are considered metabolically unhealthy. At least one in 10 American is considered healthy, but 9 out of 10 because of all of these excesses that we've been exposed to.
And how the immune system is compromised. So here you see a graphic of the lungs and the GI tract, and 70–80% of our immune system resides in our gut and our intestines. And this is no coincidence, it's because this is where most of the trauma, the stress comes into the body. So our body is designed to constantly remodel and rebuild itself on a daily basis. But the chronic stress that we put ourselves under, it inhibits this ability to repair and to slow down that accelerated breakdown that's being caused by this suppressed immunity. So we're trying to help you understand that the symptomology that Dr. Tina was referring to, how 9 out of 10 Americans are dealing with this metabolic disorder. Well, it's because we're just not in touch with the kinds of things that we need to do on a daily basis, and that's what we're sharing with you here in today's webinar. Dr. Tina.
Great, thank you. So Dr. Chris talked about all kinds of stress. So when we have accelerated stress, our energy becomes low, our resiliency lowers, our stress gets even more so. You start to see this cycle happening. Our cortisols, the hormone cortisol, that stress hormone goes up. And then what happens is we get locked into a poor sleep cycle. And what that means is that when our cortisols are high because of all of those stressors that Dr. Chris was talking about, our melatonin gets lowered. And every day that's supposed to balance and teeter-totter. So your melatonin is supposed to increase throughout the day. So at night it's high enough when you go to sleep. cortisols need to be low. But what's happening is these poor sleep habits are really kicking in because of all of these things that we're exposed to, and our cortisols, our stress hormones, are locked in a higher, at a higher level in the body. When we get locked into that high cortisol, that's when we can't go to sleep at night. That's when we can't sleep through the night. And we have these issues that happen where our melatonin stays low and our cortisol stays high. When you start to take TeloYouth, one of the wonderful things that we see happen, and we had 3,000 people taking TeloYouth, and about 50% of them experienced pretty immediately within that first 30 days, that cortisol reduction start to come down, melatonin went back up, and they unlocked that poor sleep cycle so that they could go back to sleep and sleep at night all through the night. And so it's really exciting to see that we truly have studies that support we have the capability to lower the cortisols, that stress hormone. And then we have our 5G. And
Yes.
before you jump into this one, I'd like to just give everyone a metaphor of 5G. When we were looking at 4G, it was, think of it this way, a 4-lane highway. And once we implemented 5G, it's like having an 8-lane highway with no speed limits. That's how much intensity, more intensity we are exposed to with these frequencies. And Dr. Chris and I happened to be in the city of Wuhan 2 years ago. And that's the city where, as we know, COVID ended up really coming out of that city in China. And one of the things that we'd like you to understand is that they were the first city in China to implement over 10,000 5G towers in their city in 2019. So we think that there's a correlation here. Dr. Chris, would you like to explain why?
And 30 days later, we have the coronavirus, right?
And yeah, that just infiltrated,
exactly,
the city of Wuhan.
Exactly. So it's important to understand this is an invisible stressor, and it'll only get greater, and it's a major factor of this pandemic that we're experiencing. So one of the key things that happens inside the cell is that you lose the balance between the calcium and the magnesium. You see an increase in calcium, and this changes the whole structure and the flexibility and the viability of the cell itself. It increases the free radicals that the cells are exposed to. So this causes cellular destruction, and it breaks down the healing and repair mechanisms. That's what we talk about with mitophagy and autophagy that are part of the $1,000 words there we will put in there. And then the B12 dilemma, which means here's a very specific metabolic vitamin that is so critical to maintaining the chemistry and the energy production of a cell. And all of that gets disrupted with this frequency that's coming from the electromagnetic fields that are being induced by man. So this is something that's not available in Europe and specifically Sweden. And we want to talk about Sweden because Sweden has introduced a whole different approach than the rest of the world as far as going after herd immunity. And what that means is that they're exposing people to the virus rather than protecting them from it, and helping everyone get their own self-immunization from this exposure. And this is something now that the US has started leaning towards, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But the important thing to know is that it's a strategy, but it's controversial. And the reasons it's controversial, that it requires certain prerequisites to make it succeed. So as this is gaining momentum in the White House and as far as our administration, they're suggesting with the new, National Institute of Health individual who's taken over, he's suggesting that we try herd immunity, but herd immunity requires, a certain lifestyle, because usually it's acquired through vaccinations. And we don't have a vaccine yet. We don't see one down the horizon here for a few months, if not longer. And so to get herd immunity, people just have to be exposed. Well, Sweden did that. They have a population of about 10 million people. The country's the size of California. So here you have a country the size of California, but with 1/3 of the, you have a country the size of California, but the population is only 1/3. So it's easier to work with the masses. And you have a different attitude in Europe. The attitude there is they want to be healthy rather than they just take, they just live on a fast food, diet.
Convenience.
Yeah, there's much more conscious in their diet. And so what we're seeing here is that probably the best way to explain it is that 70 to 90% of the population has to be infected, and those numbers vary. They can be as low as 43%, but that requires that the individuals be in a healthy state and not have this pre-existing metabolic dysfunction that Dr. Tina shared earlier. So when you see that 10% of the American population has diabetes and another 40% are obese, all of this are the prerequisites for these pre-existing conditions that facilitate the spread of this virus. So when you look at Sweden, it is actually second in the death rate as far as per 100,000 people, and the United States is first. And but that all happened in the first few months here when they went to herd immunity. So they've got 86,000 cases of the virus, but 6,000 deaths. And they had somewhat of a rate of 100 per day, where we're averaging 1,000 per day. And that's beginning to dramatically decrease now because of this herd immunity that they've created. But here's something to understand. Their health practitioners decided that, first of all, 90% of those infected and died were over 70 years old. And 50% of those were in nursing homes. But what hasn't been divulged until now is that the individuals in the nursing homes were given instructions to not hospitalize these individuals. So the nursing homes were told, you need to keep the infected individuals there. And they initiated an active program of euthanasia, which means that they were introducing them with, if they were diagnosed and had severe virus, they were given morphine and sedatives, and it's like an end-of-life cocktail, so that they wouldn't take up the hospital space, and they didn't have the respirator demands that we had in this country when we first were introduced to this pandemic. So you see that they handled this in a whole different way and were willing to sacrifice their elderly, but they did it for the overall good from the standpoint of helping the masses overcome this condition. So here, 90% of the population was dealt with, but in a way that their healthcare system could handle it. Well, first of all, that would never work here in the US because, first of all, the compliance isn't there. The Swedes, one of the first things they did is that they took care of social distancing, and they were very compliant in not gathering in groups of greater than 50, so that they controlled this infectious rate, and they handled it in a whole different way with their elderly. So this is something that in this country we wouldn't do, because first of all, we're not complying. to the social distancing. You see now that more than ever, we're doing these social gatherings. We're going back to school. So, and the Europeans, again, take pride in their maintaining their health. And, we're the fast food nation. We're there, they're eating good whole foods and maintaining their integrity. So understand that there's a big difference when a country chooses to go towards herd immunity. There has to be a lot of prerequisites and a lot of social and ethical understanding amongst the population in order to make it successful. So the Swedes don't expect to have a second wave because most of them have been infected and are built up their immunity. Where here in this country, because of the staggered approach that we've taken, we're getting into the fall and the winter months, and there's a real big concern about a second wave on top of the first wave that has never really been tamped down. So it's so important. The message here, the takeaway is you have to take responsibility for building your own immunity. And we're telling you that TeloYouth is a foundational component to building that, that integrity, to building back your immunity. So we're telling you it's about healthcare, not disease care. Dr. Tina, do you want to share anything more before going to that next slide?
Yes, thank you for bringing that up and clarifying some of the things around the questions that we've been getting regarding herd immunity and that approach. One of the things when we jump back to this 5G, what we're looking at now, and this is for all of you parents that are on the call or grandparents, we are being forced to be, our children are being forced to be more online. And they're increasing their screen time. The bandwidth has to be there. So it's really interesting what's happening. And so when we were looking at the ages with pre-existing conditions, 18 and under is 5%. And then it starts to move up in percentages as we age. I would highly recommend, both Dr. Chris and I, that you look at truly building the immunity for children as well, because of even this excess exposure that's going on. So,
right, the added stressor makes them more vulnerable. Exactly.
Absolutely. So get those kids outside, take breaks, a lot of breaks, and get them out in nature, and that's going to be a lot of the way to offset some of this 5G exposure as well.
Well, those of you new to the call, we've got a lot of calls recorded in your back office, or those of you that have been introduced to TeloYouth by a friend, and you're on this call for the first time. Go back and listen to some of our other presentations. And we're going to focus today on the ingredients and how they deal with the, this latest trauma that we're being exposed to. So you see the aloe vera gel extract. This ingredient exercises your immune system. So this is what makes you strong. This is what gets like your ability to handle the virus, because now that we're going into this massive exposure, this herd immunity approach that this country is starting to take, you need that strong immune system so that you don't go down with this virus. You have the ability to fight it, because viruses have always been there, and your body knows how to deal with them. It's just that it has to have the strength and resilience to do that.
Exactly. I just want to mention on the aloe vera gel extract, for all of you new on the call, we want you to understand that this is not an aloe vera gel extract that you can go purchase from a health food store. This is a highly concentrated 400 to 1 extract. So what you get in the capsule is so powerful and so highly concentrated. You couldn't, drink enough aloe vera from a health food store to get what you get from one of our capsules. So just wanted to help you understand that.
Yeah, that's great, because again, it's how it's processed, and this is processed in a way that it's still alive and has all its health benefits. And then we have the chaga mushroom. You see it as the super protector, but the most important aspect during this time, it protects us from the non-native electromagnetic fields, the things that we're getting from our cell phones, the frequencies from our computers, the frequencies that are being emitted, here by the towers that are being put up for the more expansion of the communication that happens through the electromagnetic fields. So your TVs, your phones, and your computers, you're not going to get away from them. So you need to find a way to protect yourself. And this is one of the key components of the chaga mushroom that does that. And then the fertilized tissue extract. This is the foundation of our formula. And the foundation has the ability to mediate stress. This is why it's such an important ingredient for dealing with today's times and today's issues, because it's stress that suppresses the immunity. And when you have the immune system suppressed, guess what? The virus can take over. So
And we're going to be, and we're going to be exposed to more stressors. I thought I had stress before COVID came into the world, but we just don't know, where things are. And we're not putting fear out there, but we need to be able to handle the stress that comes at us, because stress is going to continue. So our bodies need to be able to handle it. When we take our TeloYouth, you can tell you get a calmness once you take your TeloYouth. And so this is truly, truly an amazing ingredient.
It is. It's a multi-dimensional formula, and the rhodiola rosea, it's a super relaxer. So it's another form of stress mediation, and it has the ability to boost the immune system, specifically to help protect the nervous system. And you have the marine collagen, which is providing the building blocks for your tissue integrity. So here you have all this instruction coming from the aloe and the fertilized tissue extract, and you need the raw material to do that. And that's what the marine collagen and the L-arginine provide. So here you have all the things that are reducing our insulin resistance and making us more healthy with our immunity and balancing our blood sugars, and allowing us to get off that, or let's say not be part of that 90% population that has that metabolic dysfunction that we're so concerned about, that doesn't give you the protection you need. So these ingredients are very unique, very specific, and they're combined in a way that synergistically they do so much more than you can imagine.
And they're all whole foods.
Yes. And here's another question that we get a lot about, and it's about how do we best protect ourselves? And, a flu vaccine, that's a personal choice, but we wanted to educate the fact that during this time, it's not necessarily something that you want to go to, especially when you're dealing with high exposure to the coronavirus. And the reason we say that is because there's a viral interference phenomena. And this is a study that was done by the US, and it was done with the military, and it showed that when they had the flu vaccine, that increases their risk of getting the coronavirus by 36%. So not only do you have a higher risk if you're in the metabolic dysfunction category, but if you get a flu vaccine, you're compounding that risk. So here's some of the things that you need to know, so you start making better choices about your lifestyle, better choices of how you're going to build back your immune system, whether it's through vaccination or through good diet and nutrition that we're recommending you and helping you understand. So this is a very powerful statistic that it's out there, but I don't know how much you're going to see. But it was done by the Department of Defense, and our healthcare system here in the U.S. Studied the military. And this was a very recent study, 2018. So something to be very aware of.
Yeah, it's interesting. In Italy, we're getting some data there. In 2019, they actually changed the carrier of their flu vaccination from fertilized hen eggs, interestingly enough, over to what they call a QIV vaccination. And what they did is they used MDCK cell line. That's the Madden-Darby canine kidney cell line. instead of the fertilized hen eggs for growing their influenza virus. They're thinking that that could have also been why, one of the reasons why the seniors in Italy had such high mortality rates. First of all, 23% of the population is 65 or older with pre-existing conditions in Italy. And they also had this new carrier introduced in 2019 in which the seniors were required to have that flu vaccination. So we just want to be able to give you guys some of the facts and let you make your own choices.
Isn't it interesting, Dr. Tina? Here's two things that we're culturally introducing. We're introducing this 5G phenomenon, or let's say these electromagnetic fields in a greater, enhancement in our culture. And also we're introducing these vaccinations that creating these viral interferences. So we're losing those natural responses or immunities that we're used to protecting ourselves.
For sure. Oh, one thing I want to mention, we were talking with Bernard, our CHO of TeloYouth the other day, and he said that he had a story of a family living together, and the grandmother, who was 83, she was the only one in the family, in the household of 6 or 7 that were taking TeloYouth. Everyone in the family ended up getting the coronavirus except for her. And she's 83. So we thought that was interesting because she was the one that was working with him to build her immune system, taking our formula.
Well, she's very likely she's taking the right stuff.
Right. Combination of the both. Okay. Yeah. So let's talk about how can you balance a pre-existing condition, because what that means is how can you rebuild your body? First of all, take your TeloYouth, and we're going to talk a little bit about the different programs that you can take with your TeloYouth, how you can take it, and help clear up some of the questions that come in. But the first thing here is time-restricted eating. Very important. Pick a window of 12. If you haven't done this or you're not familiar with this, this means that you're going to choose a window of time where you're going to eat during the day, and the rest of the day, there's 0 calories. And what we suggest is if you're new to this program, start with 12 hours. And you would be surprised how difficult it might be for that 12 hours not to have a calorie. So you can have your coffee, but you can, no cream, no sugar, water, and really practice this time-restricted eating 3-4 days a week. Introduce it. Here's the reason why. And you'll find out on the internet, there are very many different programs. There's an 8-hour, there's a 4-hour, there's a 12-hour window of eating. But when you're not eating, what's happening is you're giving the body its time to rest. And it goes into this state of we call it autophagy. And what that means, to give you a metaphor here, I like to explain it as you have an oven that you use at home. And for all of you women, you probably know this, there is a self-cleaning mechanism in the oven that you have. And our ovens get dirty when we're baking. And they're very difficult to clean. But if we walk over, we press the button, and all of a sudden the high heat turns on and it cleans out that oven. That's what happens inside our bodies. During that time where we're not eating, where we're not in the feeding time, our body has the ability to go and have the good, healthy cells go and scavenge and clean up the unhealthy cells in the body and use those for food. So this is really important to start to practice if you're not doing this already. Eating nutrient-dense meals, very important. Whole food meals, moving away from the processed foods. We know this. Everybody on the call knows. We like to talk about a rainbow diet. When you sit down at a meal, look at your foods and think of the rainbow. Get all of those colors in there. Maintain that social distancing and good hygiene, and get plenty of hydration. And our key here for hydration is, let's say that you weigh 150 pounds. You want to drink half of that body weight in ounces per day. So it would be 75 ounces of water per day. Dr. Chris, you want to go into any of these other ones?
Well, we talk about nutrition and, the TeloYouth is a foundation, but give yourself a little extra vitamin C, great for the immune system. The oils are so critical, the omega-3s especially, which is so deficient in the American diet. And we like to recommend krill because of its high bioavailability, it's a phospholipid, and then also cod liver oil, which has the vitamin D in it, as well as all the good fats that we're looking for. And, we tell our patients, take a little extra zinc with some quercetin if you're not getting it in your diet, but, we recommend diet first to get your nutrition. Then exercise, of course. This is a good way to stress yourself enough to build your body, not to over exercise and break it down, but to exercise on a regular basis to build you up. And this has a huge impact on your immune system, and of course mitigate the exposure to the electromagnetic fields. So even if you're not in a 5G area, just know that you when the sun goes down, you need to get away from those artificial lights and televisions and phones and computers. We need to get back into our natural rhythms and cycles.
Exactly. Get out in nature. Put your bare feet on the ground. Might be a little difficult here when we get our snow, but I might still do it. Okay, so how do you take your TeloYouth? Let's talk about, there's two programs that we discuss. We tried to help put this into a framework where it would be easy to explain how to take it. So the first one here is our wellness program. And we look at, if you, on the left-hand side, if you would like to have deep sleep, more energy, glowing skin, if you have pain and you need relief, and if you're looking at longevity, this is one of the programs that you can take a look at. The period is for 3 months or more. And if you look over on the far right, we have listed what age group. And so let's look at the ages of 10 to 39. And we say unhealthy. Do you have a pre-existing condition? So, or is there overweight? What's imbalanced? You can't sleep. So, if you take a look at the daily intake, go to the left. It's 4 in the morning and 4 before dinner or bed, and that's 2 bottles a month. And so you're just going to want to look at the age group over on the right and decide what's the best for you. Now, let's look at some of the statistics of people that have gone through our wellness program. And here's 3,000 people that have either done our wellness program or a combination of our rejuvenation program. So let's take a look at 3,000 people on the effects on the left-hand side. Deep sleep and happiness during the day. Next to that, you can see on day 1, 50% of those 3,000 people experienced deeper sleep on the first day of their intake. If they didn't, their cortisols were locked in, way too strong. Their stress was chronic, and they had to work at getting this reduced. 70% in the first month were able to experience that deep sleep at night and happiness during the day. And that remaining 30%, we moved them into the rejuvenation program, which we'll review in a minute. Let's take a look at more energy, the next one. Within the first month, 50% of those 3,000 people experienced more energy. The third month, within the 3 months, 80 people experienced it. The remaining 20%, we moved them into the rejuvenation program after those 3 months. I love this next one, healthier skin tone. Within 90 days, within those 3 months, 100% of those 3,000 people loved how their skin looked. And I have to say, when your body starts to rejuvenate from the inside out, your skin is your largest organ. It can't help but looking healthier and getting healthier when your liver, your lungs, your heart, your kidneys all start to rejuvenate. So let's take a look at the next program. This is our rejuvenation program. And this is where we're looking at true age reversing technology. And people ask, does it work? TeloYouth works. It always works. It just depends on how much are you going to take, how long are you going to engage in the program, and what are some of those things you are going to do to help your lifestyle. So when somebody moves into the rejuvenation program, when we look at the effects on the left-hand side, somebody says, I truly want to get younger. I want to grow younger from the inside out. You need to make sure you understand that this is a 6-month commitment, and it's suitable for those, under or over the age of 55. I will say I have 40-year-olds and 30-year-olds that are saying they want to do the rejuvenation program because they've got some other things that have moved them into that accelerated aging a little bit faster. And it doesn't mean you can't do it if you're over the age of 55, but we're talking like 30s and 40s. It's pretty amazing. When we look at over age 55, and you're doing this for 6 months, it's 8 capsules in the morning and 8 before dinner or bed. And it's 4 bottles a month. Now, what can happen is most people are going to experience some form of retracing. And the retracing is this. It's going into the body, and all of a sudden, your body is going to have the energy, the vitality to start cleaning out the kidneys, the liver, the lungs. It's going to get into the nooks and crannies of the tissue, and it's going to start moving some of the toxicities that we can't escape. It's in our water, it's in our air, it's in our food. We are all poisoned with toxins. It's just the way it is. So when those start to move out of the body, we feel sluggish. We do say that, you can go through the retracing for about 7 days or less. Some people a little bit longer, depending on what you've been exposed to and how long you've been exposed to it. But just embrace it with peace and gratitude. Know that your body's going through that cleansing process. And if it's too much for you, you can always reduce your intake and go slower. And if you want to go through it faster, you can take more and move through it faster. Just increase your hydration. Make sure you please drink a minimum of half your body weight in ounces of water or more if you're going through the rejuvenation program, because your body needs it as you're starting to rejuvenate. Dr. Chris, is there anything you want to add? This program really reverses pre-existing conditions.
Exactly.
And that's what
we
we're
see it all the time, every day.
So we know that, typically we don't talk about this on our calls, but we do want to bring it up because we've been getting a lot of questions about this. And our current landscape is the reality right now. We're all embarking on a health crisis in our country. We're seeing it. We're seeing financial crisis happening. And so we want to be able to help you understand how you can actually get your product paid for. And if you're a customer on the call and you don't share the product, that's okay. Every time you purchase, you will earn points, and it will go into an account in your back office. And eventually you can use those points as they build up towards the purchase of future products for yourself. And then if you decide that you want to share with other family or friends or other potential customers, you can do that, and you can earn points that way to go into your account and use that to purchase your products. Builders, we have builders on the call today. There is a full plan on how to earn commissions. Our goal with the company is if somebody wants to earn commissions, we want to help you with a minimum of getting to that $2,000 to $4,000 a month. We're not here to say, get on a stage and earn $1 million. That's not what this company is about. That would be great if people are going to do that, but that's not where we're at. We're talking about the reality of helping people gain some income, especially during these times. And again, both a builder and a customer can earn those points, those loyalty rewards every time you purchase. There's a percentage of that purchase volume that goes into your back office in your account that can be used for the future purchase of products.
You know, Dr. Tina, what a great way to be a part of the health industry, and you're never going to be without a job when you're dealing with healthcare. So, nice way to come in and help so many people with a very safe and effective way.
Absolutely, and we have to remind you, this is a whole food supplement. There is nothing toxic in it, and the synergy of these ingredients really do rebuild your immune system and all of the other systems in the body.
Well, we're so happy you could join us today, and please feel free to join all our calls every week. They're for educational purposes only. They're not designed to be a substitute for professional health care. So we do not treat, diagnose, or deal with any form of ailment, but we help you understand how your body works. And we strongly recommend you work closely with your health practitioner and health professional and get the best advice that you can on a local basis. Thank you, everyone. And back to you, MJ.
Thank you, Dr. Chris, Dr. Tina, for sharing your knowledge. This Saturday, we will be sharing real-life stories of TeloYouth clients on how their lives have changed, and we'll also answer your questions. So we encourage you to bring your stories and questions.